community looks forward to working with USAID, other elements of the other parts of the U.S. government, and the many partners you mentioned to realize these very worthwhile ambitions. Let me introduce now our panelists. We have a terrific group of 6 panelists. I'm going to introduce each in the order in which they're going to speak. First, we have with us, I'm delighted, the President of Latvia, Egils Levits. He was elected to the presidency in 2019. He came to that office after 15 years of service as a judge on the European Court of Justice. And prior to that, a number of important positions in law and diplomacy with governmental institutions, multilateral, and academic institutions as well. He brings to the panel the experience of a country on the front lines of many digital threats to democracy, but also a country that's been putting forward interesting innovations, technological innovations, to help democracy work more effectively. After that, we'll hear from Audrey Tong, who's a minister without portfolio in the government of Taiwan. In this capacity, Minister Tong has been a force for digital innovation in the Taiwanese government and throughout Taiwanese society. Tong has brought to this position a notable record of accomplishments in the technology sector. Once the coronavirus pandemic hit, Minister Tong was part of the effort by the Taiwanese government to share its experience in bringing technological tools to help meet the public health challenge, and I hope we'll hear a bit about that today. After that, Ambassador Eileen Donahoe. She is currently the director of the Global Digital Policy Incubator at Stanford University's Cyber Policy Center. She previously served during the Obama administration as the U.S. ambassador to the UN Human Rights Council, and following that, director for global affairs at Human Rights Watch, where she represented the organization at many international forums on issues relating to digital rights, technological innovation, cybersecurity, and other relevant issues. After that, I'll be calling on Nanjira Sambuli, who I'm delighted to say is a colleague of mine at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. She's a fellow in the Technology and International Affairs program of the endowment. She's a researcher, a policy analyst, and a strategist working on the technological dimensions of entrepreneurship, media, culture, and many other elements of governance as well. And she brings to that role a special focus on the gender dimensions, the justice dimensions, and the African dimensions of those issues. After that, we'll hear from Samar Saran, who's president of the Observer Research Foundation in India, one of Asia's leading think tanks. Samar Saran has been involved in many different areas of international policy and international affairs over the years. To mention just a few of his current engagements, he curates the Raisina Dialogue, India's sort of main platform, I would say, focusing on geopolitics and geoeconomics. And he also chairs the India Conference on Cybersecurity and Internet Governance. Last, but certainly not least, Manuel Muniz, who's the provost of the IE University in Spain. Prior to becoming provost of the university, he served as the state secretary in Spain's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and prior to that, he was the founding director of the Center for Governance Change at IE University, and was also associated with the Weatherhead Center for International Affairs at Harvard University. So a tremendous lineup of people. What I'm going to do is pose one question to each, give them a bit of time to set out, as I said, some framing remarks, but also to try to get into some of the details we need to bring this subject to the ground, as it were. So let me turn first to President Levits. As I mentioned, your country has been on the front lines of dealing with digital threats, but also trying to put forward digital innovations that help democracy become more effective. I'm hoping you can give us just a little bit of an overview to tell us about some of the responses and innovations that Latvia has made in recent years.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning or good evening to all around the globe, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this distinguished panel. First, let me say some words on the problem of disinformation. Previous speakers already mentioned that. On disinformation, indeed, already 10 years ago, Latvia argued for the importance of the new communications. And in 2014, we established NATO Stratcom Center in Riga. And NATO's Stratcom Center in Riga is globally one of the leading institutions in research on disinformation. Today, all democracies are on front line. Information space is weaponized against our own societies, and it is a manipulation of our hearts and minds. I would like to underline two directions, which we can do globally, but also we are doing here in Latvia. Also, first, the platforms, the global internet platforms. These are companies in our countries, and we should be capable to address that issue. The power of decision-making, where one sets the boundaries of speech, responsibility for hate, and accountability, has to return to democratic institutions through rule of law and regulations. I can mention that the European Union is already in course of drafting a legislation on regulation of global internet platforms, which should guarantee a certain responsibility of these platforms, in the same time guarantee freedom of speech, which is very important. Second, we have to invest in journalism and media literacy. The global funding for independent media could be one initiative this summit pursue in practice. If we are coming to the innovations for our citizens, I would like to emphasize the role of public sector. While we speak on artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, and dream about tourism to Mars, we in public sector have to get the very basics right. The public sector must follow its customer or citizen and apply know your customer principle when designing and delivering its services digitally and in line with security and privacy requirements. Latvia has invested in key public infrastructure, and I will mention only shortly 3 examples here. First, since 2008, we have introduced secure digital identity, and it will become mandatory in a year. With digital identity, we provide secure services where ID holder is the owner of his digital data. Second, fast and unlimited internet via cables and mobile operators for everyone. In addition, Latvia produced network equipment, routers that are designed and produced in Latvia, but delivered globally, and so we can ensure safe and reliable network for our critical infrastructure and for our citizens. And third, we have digitized and connected our public registries to be able to provide one-stop shop for most of the public services here in Latvia. Ladies and gentlemen, pandemics is a sort of a digital exam for nations, and Latvia have passed this exam. The Latvian government and public sector worked fully remotely during the pandemic and is working also now in this mode. The lawmakers adopted and signed laws from distance fully digitally. Schools worked remotely, and daily communication between the citizen and in the state were not interrupted. But during the crisis, we learned also our gaps, and these are 2 priorities of our work now. First, it is the digital skills of our people. Latvia will launch multiple programs to advance digital skills at any age and profession. Particular focus is placed on women to accelerate their opportunities in proper studies and job market. We start with schools, where we made commitment to provide the portable computer for every child and teacher. The procurement has already started, and I hope that semiconductor shortage in the world won't hamper this effort. In short, to build back democracies, we need modern, digital, and trustworthy public services, and that will restore the trust in our public institution. I think we have already, in an early stage, recognized the problems with social networks, with disinformation. We have worked on that, And we have introduced a lot of digital innovations for our people, for our citizens, and we are working hard to develop all the innovations in order to promote democracy and human rights.
Thank you very much for those remarks. I think a lot of what you say certainly resonates here in the U.S. experience, the emphasis on public services, for example, but many other things as well. Let me turn now to Audrey Tong, the Minister without Portfolio in the government of Taiwan. You have been active, Audrey, in bringing the experience of Taiwan during the coronavirus pandemic to other countries. What are some of the main messages or lessons that you've been taking to other countries about how technological tools can help build trust and transparency in the technology ecosystem relating to the public health challenges?
Thank you for the great question. The main message is to work not just for the people, but with the people. Every year, the human rights organization Civicus, with around 20 regional partners, conduct research about freedom and civic space. And Taiwan has been rated as completely open for 3 consecutive years. We're the only Asian country with that distinction and the sole Asian green light on this year's Civicus monitor. So how do we come so far on this path? The key factor is that the internet in Taiwan has developed alongside democratization. Between the lifting of the martial law in 1987 and the presidential election in 1996, we saw the popularization of PCs and the World Web in the span of 10 years. So for Taiwanese people, democracy is like a social technology. It can only be enriched through the joint efforts of all. Therefore, our government insists that broadband is a human right, reducing the cost for civic technologies. Our network infrastructure allows everyone to broadcast live from Jade Mountain, Taiwan's highest peak. We believe that a completely open environment with free speech uncensored is perfect for letting digital democracy flourish. And with our 23 million citizens using the internet as space for democracy, we fought off the pandemic with no lockdowns and the infodemic with no takedowns. In 2019, when news about the pandemic just started, our pro-social social media platform here allowed timely response to early warnings. In the face of global challenges, digital democracy has proven to be the most effective solution. This SMS-based contact tracing system is a great example. To eliminate community transmission, contact tracing must be done rapidly and effectively, of course. Inaccurate information will put us in the dilemma of having to choose between protecting privacy and preventing the pandemic. So rolling out a mandatory government app, we think would only backfire. So instead of centralizing contact tracing data or yielding control to multinational corporations, we sought social sector solutions with the people. Earlier this year, the civic technologists in the G0V or Gov0 community invented this mechanism of contact tracing based on text messages. We work across sectors with telecom carriers to deploy this 1922 SMS system in a week. As you can see, scanning a QR code with the built-in camera, no app download required, setting a toll-free text message, people can keep track of their itineraries. This allows contact tracer to confirm the footprints of infected people and their contact without revealing any private information to venue owners. And this collaboration cannot happen without this strong trust across sectors. Of course, we need to bridge the digital gap for the elderly and visually impaired. So contact tracing can still be done through measures such as handwriting or stamping. When contact tracers apply for information about certain phone numbers, they submit requests through the civic platform to browse them. The phone number holder can then reverse audit contact tracers' requests and activities. All records are deleted after 28 days. And because the civic tech originates from a community that has always valued personal data sovereignty, we can respond to new challenges with timely improvements. For instance, text messages sent to 1922 were discovered by a judge assessing a police search warrant. Fortunately, this multi-party secure design prevented the police from accessing the mapping between the random codes and the specific venues. So the judge denied the warrant and publicly questioned the legality of even wiretapping text sent to 1922. Following discussions, our Ministry of Justice concluded that these SMS does not constitute communication under the Communication Security and Surveillance Act and therefore should not be repurposed for law enforcement, keeping the original civic intent intact. Rule by the people is the original intent of democracy. In the face of global threats such as the pandemic and disinformation, our Taiwan model shows that the world, that this people-public-private partnership with the people can shape a digital democracy. Trusting our citizens to participate in policymaking can form shared goals, develop innovative solutions, and contribute to the world. Thank you.
Very much, Minister Tong. That is truly an impressive demonstration you've given of just one element of what I know would be a whole suite of experiences and tools and innovations that Taiwan has put